The Sonic the Hedgehog series is in an incredible place right now, and it couldn't be a better time to be a Sonic fan. I'm serious. The Sonic movies are doing well with the third one on the way in 2024, as well as a brand new Knuckles TV show coming out next year. The first few episodes of Sonic Prime just released on Netflix, and those are great so far. The comics are still doing fantastic. And now we have Sonic Frontiers, a really solid Sonic title that I think is a promising foundation for the series going forward and an overall good game. Now, I already made a non-spoiler review of Sonic Frontiers, so if you want to watch a review of the game without getting spoiled, I'll leave a link to the video on the card up top, and I'll put it in the description. In this review though, I am going to cover everything, like the story, the Titan boss fights, as well as some extra stuff overall. But I do want to give a disclaimer to those who already watched my non-spoiler review of Sonic Frontiers, that in this full review video, I will be including clips from my non-spoiler review, since I already talked about the gameplay mechanics in that video. I figured this is best, so anyone that wants to know my full thoughts on Sonic Frontiers don't need to watch 2 videos to get everything. I will be adding new stuff here and there though, so it won't be an exact carbon copy, but... What, you expected me to talk about everything again? What are you, nuts? But rest assured, I will be going further in depth on everything. And I will be putting timestamps in the video so you can watch the parts you are most curious about. I also want to give another disclaimer that I did have the honor of working with Sega to record and edit both the Sonic Frontiers Brazil Symphony concert, as well as the recent Speedstrat series for the game. First off, thank you for all the kind words, it seriously means a lot. And second, I do want to make it clear that these opportunities do not affect my judgment of the game at all, and these opinions are strictly my own. With that said, let's jump right into the full review of Sonic Frontiers. It's been 5 years since the last 3D mainline Sonic game. Sonic Forces, if you want to know my thoughts on that game, you can watch my review from 2017. My thoughts then still hold up now, but for a quick TLDR, I didn't like it. The game has horrible writing, horrible controls, the entire game felt very automatic and short, the level design was pretty much non-existent with everything being a linear hallway. Classic Sonic felt unnecessary, but the custom character was cool. But that's really the only positive I could give it. The game left a bad taste in everyone's mouth, especially because the trailer said it was from the team that brought you Sonic Colors and Sonic Generations. Which was a lie. In fact, some of the most important aspects, like level design, was done by newbies. The trailers also showed villains that you never even fight. A game we waited years for only lasted no more than 3 hours. This resulted in a huge loss of trust in Sonic Team, at least by yours truly. And I knew, when they were going to announce the next game, I was going to be very, very cautious this time around. It was just a matter of waiting. And waiting we did, because during this last 5 years, we had games like Sonic Mania Plus, which was a nice DLC, Team Sonic Racing, which was a great soundtrack that came with the game apparently.
What up, Sonic Squad? Today we're doing some Sonic Racing. Ready? Let me show you how it's done. Gotta get these rings. Whoa, 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 whoa. Come on, almost there. First place!
Sonic Colors Ultimate, which was ultimately disappointing due to its buggy release, and Sonic Origins, which is an okay collection for the most part, but definitely not the definitive way to play those classics. We also had 2 blockbuster movies which skyrocketed Sonic's relevance again. The first movie did an amazing job considering how it started. That's a placeholder, right? What the f- And Sonic Movie 2 is probably the best video game movie to date. Due to their success, it made me wonder what Sonic Team was cooking up their sleeve considering how many new fans the movies just made. They had to come out swinging. Then on May 27th, 2021, we were given a small teaser of what's to come next, and it didn't show much. It didn't have any gameplay, it didn't show what direction they were taking apart from the strange cybernetic effect. Heck, we didn't even have a name for the game yet. But shortly after this trailer, leaks would spread revealing that this was indeed an open world Sonic game of sorts. Which sounded ambitious, but I was cautious as this was the same team that has made nothing but hallways for so long. But my main concern was the control for this game, as regular Boost Sonic never really controlled well in a 3D space. My main hope going forward was that they were going to incorporate momentum into the mix like Sonic Adventure controls. Then on December 9th, 2021, we got our first real trailer for the game, now called Sonic Frontiers, which showed the open world. And my reaction was kind of mixed. Oh, let me see the world, let me see the world. Please tell me it has loops and twists and twirls, okay. It looks beautiful. Please tell me it has loops and twists and twirls, okay. While the game looked beautiful, I was a bit put off by the world design. The lack of loops, corkscrews, and major hills for momentum-based platforming was immediately apparent. Now, that doesn't mean the game isn't going to be good. It's just going for a different style of gameplay, and different it was. Because on June 1st, 2022, we finally got our first bit of gameplay via IGN First that showed 7 minutes of the game, and wow, what a horrible way to reveal your game. This gameplay was so boring. It looked like there was nothing to do, and the things they were doing was just pressing buttons on super easy puzzles. It looked slow, they kept spamming the boost button every 5 seconds. Rails were everywhere, poppin' was very apparent. They kept on trying to make Sonic walk, making his animations look jank. The dream of having momentum was officially dead, and yeah, this killed a lot of my excitement for the game. Then next we saw the combat, and it looked promising. And as time went on and the more and more we saw of the game, like the bosses and the other islands and the dialogue, my excitement for the game grew back over time since that IGN video. I still had my gripes about it, like some animation and pop-in, but I knew that that IGN video was a horrible representation of what the game was going to be like. But now, it's here. Was the 5-year-long wait worth it for us Sonic fans? Let's find out now. I can't believe I'm saying this. Like in all my reviews, I'm going to start with the story first, and oh my god, we have an actual story with meaningful dialogue in a Sonic game. Let's jump right in. First, let's start with the prologue, which if you haven't seen it already, please do. It is so good. But anyways, the story starts with Knuckles around the Angel Island and Sky Sanctuary area. He's going around asking questions to himself like who created the shrines to the Emerald and where they went. Yeah, he's asking the big questions you never think they'd go into. While exploring the ruins of his home and helping Chao, he stumbles upon an area he's never discovered before. An area that looks much older than the rest. He finds a portal gear and a cyberspace gate with a slot to insert it. Once he puts it in, he is transported into cyberspace. There, he fights off some regular soldier enemies, but is then interrupted by a mysterious girl. He is then put in a ghost state, trapped in a cage. Next, we jump over to Dr. Eggman, who is investigating the Ancients to harness their secrets and to use it to, of course, destroy Sonic and to conquer the world. Some things never change. To do this, he connects his new AI program named Sage to cyberspace. When he connects Sage to cyberspace, the scope of her abilities immediately becomes modified, but something didn't go as planned. Sage begins to run a protective initiative after running some simulations. When Eggman tries to take Sage back, she drags him into cyberspace, where he will be safe. From what? We don't know yet. Meanwhile, Sonic, Tails, and Amy are on the tornado on their way to the Starfall Islands because Tails tracked that the Chaos Emeralds were drawn to them, and they want to figure out why. Almost immediately though, some atmospheric cyber energy almost crashes the plane, separating them, and they are thrown into cyberspace, a digital dimension based off of Sonic's memories. Bullshit! Unlike the others though, Sonic was able to escape cyberspace using his speed. This voice tells him that he is the key since he has this power. He asks if he can save his friends, and in response, the voice tells him to get the Chaos Emeralds, destroy the Titans, and to tear down the walls between dimensions. When he asks for context, there is none. So with nothing else to go off of, his plan is now in motion. Along the way on the first island, Kronos, he finds Amy, trapped in some cage with cyber energy, which he then absorbs for finding memory tokens to free her. But it's not that easy. Amy is stuck between dimensions, so she's in this ghost form and not all there. He vows to follow what the voice says to save her and to continue on. After obtaining another Chaos Emerald, Sonic is then interrupted by a huge Titan with Sage warning him to leave. Sonic of course doesn't listen, thinking the Titan is keeping Amy trapped, and attempts to fight it anyways, resulting in After waking up from his ass kicking, he now knows that he must take it down using the power of Super Sonic. While searching for the emeralds on the island, Amy finds a little rock creature called a Coco, who asks for her help to find her true love before it's too late. Sonic, who realistically thinks that there's more important matters to worry about, reluctantly agrees to help. By helping the Coco around the island, a few interesting things happen. First, they find the mother Coco, who needs to find her children. When Sonic brings them to her, they, fucking die. What the fuck? But hey, we got a Chaos Emerald, so that's something? Yeah, you dance, Sonic. From observation, it looks like that their souls went into an afterlife of some kind, and when this happens, this symbol appears in the sky. Well, not knowing what just happened, they continue on. While searching the island, Sonic notices that the ruins are custom built with the emeralds in mind, realizing that whatever old civilization was here understood the power of the emeralds, probably more than they do now. But they also notice that the land resembles from their experience areas that recovered after Eggman damaged them, making them wonder what ruined this land in the past. Along the way, he runs into Sage, who warns him that his actions endanger the world. When Sonic asks for clarification as to why, Sage doesn't answer, because Sonic is considered an enemy because of Eggman, and she won't share data with him. But Sonic doesn't get a bad vibe from her and keeps trying to figure out her motives along the way. Meanwhile, in cyberspace, Eggman is looking for a way to leave the digital dimension, with Sage telling him that there is no way he could be safely removed from cyberspace. Frustrated, he tells her to keep looking and to make it her priority, but she is conflicted as her main priority is to protect him. More on that later. While trying to help the Coco with Amy, both her and Sonic experience a flashback from the cyber energy. What they see is the Coco, now resembling something like Chaos, walking towards their true love while bombs go off all around them. They both reunite, but as soon as they do, they are destroyed. When Sonic and Amy come back from the flashback, they notice the empty shell of the Coco lying with their one true love, with the symbol from before in the sky. It becomes clear that the Coco are somehow the souls of the Ancients, almost acting out like the Ancients did right before they were wiped out. Can I just say that when I saw this cutscene, I was immediately invested in the story. Who are the Ancients? What happened to them? And what is their relevance to Chaos from Sonic Adventure? That's something I really love about this game, is it's playing with new things, but basing it on established lore and characters from previous games, which is awesome. Continuing on, by clearing a few puzzles, Sonic clears a way to the Titan, which is holding the last emerald. Once he grabs it, he's able to turn into Super Sonic, where... sorry, we'll get to that. Using Super Sonic, he's able to bring the Titan down. The voice tells him that the first seal is broken and that there's more to take down. Amy's still not out of her ghost form, and it's believed that he needs to take down all of the Titans to free her. So he moves on to the next island called Ares to take down the next Titan. But it's not so simple, because of course it's not. When he gets to Ares, he's immediately shot down by a random laser, and the emeralds are shot right out of him. And the hunt for the emeralds start anew. While on Ares, he finds Knuckles, trapped in the same corrupted energy as Amy. He absorbs the energy to free him, and together they work to find the emerald so that Knuckles can be freed from his ghost state, and to go back to protecting the Master Emerald. Along the way, Knuckles mentions that these ruins predate anything on Angel Island from a wide margin, but the spiritual spaces and the military structures do share similarities to the ancient echidnas, piecing together that the Ancients and Echidnas aren't related, but one must have inspired the other, which is another interesting premise, and it invested me in the story even further. While hunting for the emeralds, Sonic is once again interrupted by Sage, who sicks a giant Titan on him. Sonic is barely able to escape, with Sage telling him that this was his final warning to leave. When Sonic doesn't, she mentions that her father was right about him, and she proceeds to try to eliminate him. Knuckles comes in and is able to protect Sonic. Knuckles then tries to attack her, but Sonic stops him and tries to talk to her again. This confuses Sage, and she leaves. Meanwhile in cyberspace, Eggman is very proud of Sage and mentions Orbot and Cubot. Sage becomes happy at the thought of them being like her brothers, which is heartwarming and sets up the story going forward. She then informs Eggman that Sonic is able to escape cyberspace on his own, which impresses Eggman, which then makes Sage wonder what it would be like if they worked together. Knuckles then finds a Coco army who is separated from their unit. Sage sees Sonic help them and questions why he is helping the Coco when their fate is already decided. With the Coco army, Knuckles and Sonic experience a flashback event showing the very Coco army as they were as Ancients during a battle. During this, they observe both the defenses and the Ancients get completely obliterated. When they come to, they see a bunch of empty hulls of the Cocos littered all over the floor. They then find more army Coco who need to retreat to a bunker now that the defenses are down. The bunker reminds Knuckles of the ruins on Angel Island, which makes him wonder if some of the Ancients survived and resettled on Angel Island. This then gets interrupted though when they get ambushed by a bunch of goons who is going to destroy the bunker. Knuckles gets reminded about his own past and is desperate to help them. Thanks to Sonic, they fend off the enemies, and by doing so, the Coco souls get released. But after this encounter, you get one of my favorite scenes in the game. Knuckles gets reminded that his people were wiped out by a cataclysm, and can tell that the Coco experienced the same fate, and it reminds him that he's the last Echidna and alone. Sonic reminds him that he's not alone, and that he has his friends by his side. I'm going to be completely honest here. I got emotional watching this scene and still do. Knuckles being the last Echidna is not something that gets touched on very often, and hasn't really been talked about in the games since Adventure. Seeing Knuckles, a character that often acts very tough and hard-headed, opening up to Sonic about his personal feelings about being alone, really got me. But also seeing Sonic remind him that he'll always be there for him along with the rest of the gang reminds me why I loved Sonic's character in the first place when I was a kid. His commitment to help the people around him is my favorite thing about his character. For example, that's why the Helen episode in Sonic X is my favorite. Moments like this is why I love the writing in this game. The Sonic we have here is the Sonic that people know and love. Sage sees this interaction and is amazed that he helps people that he is at odds with and is quick to make peace. I believe in this moment she thinks about what it'd be like for Sonic to work with Eggman, but quickly shoots down the idea and says that they are doomed. After getting all the emeralds, Sonic then fights the Titan as Super Sonic and destroys it. With one more Titan bot to go, Sonic races to Chaos Island. Once there, he gets shot down by random lasers. And just like that, it's time to hunt for the emeralds. Again. Along the way, Sonic finds Tails and frees him by absorbing more of the energy, but this time you can tell the corrupted cyber energy is really starting to take its toll. Along the way, Tails uses his insight to uncover that the areas of Chaos Island feel more like a military front line of sorts. Clearly, the Ancients were preparing for a huge battle. He also uncovers that the cyberspace portals are used for the Ancients to upload their very essence, like their thoughts and feelings, and the Coco are the spirits of the Ancients. Along the way, Sonic has another encounter with Sage, where she sticks another giant Titan on him. Sonic survives, and Sage just goes on not really minding it. Sonic tries to convince her that he's willing to work together, but Sage still seems reluctant as she has run the simulations and doesn't show any change in the outcome. Sonic talks to her about how living beings don't live off numbers or simulations, but the desire to protect the ones you love. This makes Sage wonder how love could be converted to power. This is significant because you could tell that Sonic's drive to help and save his friends is starting to change Sage's view of him. Later on, Tails and Sonic see a flashback, this time showing the Ancients firing at something in the sky before quickly being decimated. Tails also runs into a Coco who needs help finding parts to complete their weapon. This makes Tails question whether it's cruel to help them, considering that they know it's a fruitless effort and that their battle is long over. Sonic reassures him though that this will bring them peace, so he agrees. When they do this though, the Coco mentions that they are worried because their hero didn't show. Tails then recounts how this is the same feeling he had when Infinite attacked in Forces. Oh god. Yeah, they're going into it. So yeah, while hunting for the emeralds, Sonic and Tails talk quite a bit in probably one of the best redemption arcs in the entire series. Tails mentions that while he was trapped in cyberspace, he saw another version of himself talking down to him about being a follower and not being independent, and then recounts how he fell apart in Forces. The very scene that I myself hated about Sonic Forces. This makes Sonic concerned and he wants to talk to Tails about it, but Tails assures Sonic to find the emeralds first. While Sonic is out helping the Coco, Sage then talks to Tails and asks him if he trusts how Sonic is handling taking down the Titans with his life. Tails shares that he trusts Sonic since he has overcome impossible odds again and again, and even has data to back that up. Something that Sage, who only lives off numbers and probabilities, reciprocates with. Sage then implies that the end is near for them, but leaves before explaining further. Sage asks Sonic what his end goal is, which genuinely leads to a really funny fourth wall break from Sonic.
What is your end goal?
It varies. Sometimes it's a spinning sign, sometimes it's a big old ring.
No.
Why are you the way that you are?
But besides that, he mentions that his end goal is to simply save his friends. Sage asks what if the voice in the sky is leading him to disaster, which Sonic says that he'll take them down too. He then tells Sage to stop being cryptic or leave him alone. Sage then goes to talk to Eggman and tells him that the only way for him to leave cyberspace safely is to work with Sonic, something Eggman quickly shoots down. Later, Eggman is having to deal with the hazards of cyberspace, with Sage coming in to save him on numerous occasions. This makes Eggman proud of Sage, and starts to look at her as more of a daughter figure than a random robot. More on this dynamic later. Meanwhile, Tails in a spur of the moment asks Sonic if he's a burden to him, explaining that whenever there's a crisis, he's either running away or standing on the sidelines. Sonic quickly reminds him of his heroic actions in the past, like in Adventure. Tails then becomes frustrated with how inconsistent he is, and in a heartfelt moment, Sonic tells him it's okay to need help sometimes. It's part of growing up and that there is nothing to worry about. They help the Coco with the defenses and its spirit gets freed when they tell him that his hero will be proud of him. And Sonic, in this moment, tells Tails that he is proud of him too. This entire redemption arc with Tails is nothing short of a masterpiece. Seeing the team openly addressing something that all of us fans severely disliked about Sonic Forces is very much appreciated, and I'll talk more about the significance of this interaction later on. Tails later concludes that after all this is over, he wants to take it alone for a while, to help him grow the confidence he needs. Sonic supports him and they laugh. Sage sees this encounter and becomes emotional because she wants a family born of love like they have, which makes her cry. And I believe in this moment, this is her first time feeling genuine emotion. Sonic collects all the emeralds and goes on to face the last Titan. After defeating it, it's revealed that 6 towers need to be shut down for the walls between dimensions to be closed. The corruption at this point is starting to take its toll on Sonic. When he shuts down each tower, a vision plays that gives us a huge lore drop. The Ancients are seen using the Chaos Emeralds to power their engines to let them escape from their planet. Right as they do, you can see this large beam completely wiping out their entire planet in an instant. The Ancients are then brought to Sonic's world because something is drawing the emeralds to the planet, making them lose all control of their navigations. The thing drawing them in is the Master Emerald. Fast forward, and the Ancients are starting to utilize cyberspace in their new home to upload their entire history. Their hopes, their dreams, their memories can all be uploaded and accessed at any time. But things take a turn for the worst when they learn that the thing that wiped out their home followed them and is on its way to destroy the world that they are settled on now. The Ancients then create the Titans, powered by the Chaos Emeralds, to defeat what is coming. And if that doesn't successfully work, they mention that a small group will take the emeralds to the Master Emerald that drew them into the planet. Which is interesting, and I wonder if that group will somehow eventually turn Angel Island into what it is today. I really hope they cover that in a future story. Then it happens. The Ancients using the Titans are trying to fight whatever's behind their home being destroyed. But it's all in vain and it's not working. In a last-ditch attempt to save the world, one of the Ancients decides to sacrifice themselves to seal the being in their Titan and ask the rest of the team to seal them away in cyberspace to protect the world. He then seals the being in his Titan, sacrificing himself, and after this happens, I'm not quite sure what's happening, to be honest. So the first Ancient decides to sacrifice himself and seals it away. So what are the others still fighting? Anyways, at this point, Sonic shuts down all of the towers, but he took on so much cyber energy that it corrupted him. Eggman begins to celebrate this, but Sage quickly tries to usher him back into cyberspace before the being that wiped out the Ancients gets out. And right as she says that, sure enough, it wakes up. The voice that directed Sonic to take down the Titans and tear down the walls between dimensions in the very beginning of the game was in fact the very being that wiped out the Ancients and now plans to consume all. What a shocker. No way! Sonic's friends band together to save Sonic and to take his cyber energy back. They hold hands and... Wait, what? It worked? That easy? Okay, now that I guess that seemingly minor inconvenience is now over, Sage asks Eggman if he can work with Sonic, as that is a scenario she never simulated before. Eggman reluctantly agrees, and the hunt for the emerald starts anew. One last time. Oh, whoa, wait a minute. Where did the emeralds go? They didn't even show how he lost them this time. Did he idiotically get shot by another laser for a third time? Did they just give up? They give up. They gave up. Oh my god. While on Uranus Island, Sonic and Sage work together to get all the emeralds and uncover the truths behind the Ancients. Along the way, Sage explains to Sonic that she secured Eggman in cyberspace to protect him from the impending doom, and that's why she tried to stop Sonic from taking down the Titans. Sage also clarifies what exactly the Coco are in relation to the Ancients. They originated as lucky charms for the Ancients. They were not designed to contain their wills, but the Coco along the way did in fact contain the wills of them, making them wonder if the Ancients changed them or if the Cocos wanted to keep their memories alive once they were gone. She also clarified that the Ancients uploaded their entire consciousness into cyberspace with their loved ones, so they will never truly be gone. And she also reveals that she was indeed the one that drew the emeralds back to the islands to use them with the Ancients' technology to stop the emergence of their old foe. Sonic is able to collect 6 emeralds, with the last one given by Eggman. He turns into Super Sonic and begins fighting the last true Titan, Supreme. After stopping the Titan, the being trapped inside escapes into space to regain its true form. Sage then turns to Dr. Eggman and says that she must leave him and help to have a chance of success, as Super Sonic can't handle this alone. Eggman, in a broken voice, tells her to go and fulfill her function. She assumes control of the Supreme Titan And with Supersonic, they both blast off into space for the final showdown, with a broken Eggman telling his daughter to be careful.
Be careful, dear daughter.
They both race to space to battle the being responsible for wiping out the Ancients and threatening to wipe out the world. A foe that will truly be like no other. A foe so great that even Supersonic can't take them down without help. An absolute battle between life and death as we know it, and that foe is... a moon. Wait, what? The end? That's random. With Sonic and Sage working together, they're able to deliver a punishing blow to the moon, but right as it seems like it's over, the end is about to explode, I think, and at the very last minute, Sage jumps into it to suppress it, I think. I mean, it still explodes, but I'm so confused. She tells Sonic in her dying breath to look after her father, and that's it. Sonic lands back on Earth, all his friends are happy and reunited. You get this touching scene with Eggman mourning the loss of his AI daughter, accompanied by a beautiful song sung by Sage, thanking her father for everything. It's a touching moment, and it did make me feel bad for Eggman. Well, at least I feel bad for him because it looks like no one on the hero team gives a single f or even acknowledges what just happened. Sage died to protect you! You guys gonna talk about it at all? No? You guys, oh, okay, never mind. The heroes jump on the tornado towards a new adventure, and that's the story of Sonic Frontiers. Or so it seems. There is an after-credit scene showing Eggman using what I think is cyberspace to rebuild Sage, as it shows the ancient symbol on screen. What a massive, massive improvement since the last game. Like, holy shit. It is night and day comparing this game's story to the likes of Lost World and Sonic Forces. I'm just going to say this right out of the gate. Sega, keep Ian Flynn as your writer. This was such a well-balanced story, and yeah, it's not perfect, and I'll go into the flaws. This is such a damn good narrative. I actually felt emotion while playing this game, and I was invested. Starting out, the mood of this game is very, very somber. It sets the tone going forward. Everything around Sonic at first glance is very bleak, and it makes sense. He's around ruins about this ancient beings that were wiped out in a huge cataclysm. But over time, Sonic is like a ray of sunshine in this story. I love his energy here, his upbeat attitude, his sense of humor, and most of all, his desire to save his friends reminds me of the Sonic we once had a long time ago that has since been forgotten. But that's not all. For the first time in a long time, Sonic's friends are no longer just glorified cheerleaders on the sidelines. They are trying to help our hero as much as possible in their ghost state. Yes, finally, they are actually doing something significant with the supporting cast. And it's not just Sonic. I love every character in this story. Amy's drive to help the Coco find its one true love was charming. And can I just say how much Amy's character improved since the earlier games? Granted, she's always been this way for a while, but I just love how she's no longer the annoying girl cliche that's just fixated on Sonic 24/7. She is her own person with her own goals. Nothing ever feels forced, and the dynamic between Amy and Sonic feels natural. And then we have Knuckles, and he's back and better than ever. The prologue was amazing. You see him back at his home, protecting the Master Emerald, finally! Something that has been forgotten about for like 20 years in the games. You see him utilizing his abilities, gliding around, helping Chao on his way, and doing everything he can to make sure his Emerald is safe. He wants to do everything on his own without the help of others. That's the stubbornness we've missed in this character. And he even admits that he needs help sometimes. Knuckles' relationship with Sonic is great to see. It's something that we haven't seen in so long. They care about each other even when they are at odds. Knuckles likes to play fight against Sonic like back in the day. When he's helping direct the Army Coco to their bunker, he is helping them because their history reminds him of his history and the events that wiped out his people. It's believable, not forced like Knuckles being an army general leader of a resistance like in Sonic Forces. And when he's reminded that he's the last Echidna, it's heartbreaking. I feel bad for Knuckles, and it makes it all that much more heartwarming to see Sonic care about his friends and reminding him that he'll always be there for him. And when Knuckles is giving insight to Sonic about the architecture of the island and comparing it to Angel Island, it is so interesting to see the lore being expanded upon and creating something new but familiar at the same time. And then we have Tails. This is the best redemption arc this series has ever seen. One of the biggest complaints about Tails is how the past writers completely neglected his character. Tails' entire story and adventure is about believing in himself and solving problems without the need of Sonic to do it all. It is established then, but was forgot about and made worse in the games all the way up until Forces. This entire encounter is Tails feeling ashamed about how he's been acting and how he needs Sonic to do everything. When he asked Sonic if he was a burden, that got me. And when he mentioned how he acted when Infinite attacked, it was great to see the blatant acknowledgement. I feel like any other game company wouldn't willingly discuss Hot Topic about how they messed up a character, but the way Ian did this is genius. We're not going to pretend it didn't happen. We can't. It's best to acknowledge that it did happen and let that be the reason for the character to grow from here on out. It feels like an apology for how they treated Tails, and it was so charming to see our #1 sidekick working on himself to be more independent, something I'm sure a lot of us could also relate to. And that's something refreshing too. We can relate to them, something I'm sure was a lot harder for us to do between 2010 to Forces. Another positive is how everything in the Sonic universe now feels connected. With the past writers, it felt like every new Sonic game was like a Saturday morning cartoon where everything that happened in the last game was never acknowledged or built from. It gave the impression that the series was ashamed that it even used to have a narrative in the past, and as a result, it tried super hard to be something it wasn't. Something simpler and more basic like Mario or any other super safe family-friendly character. It was always absurd to me whenever critics would think that is best for Sonic. Arguably, one of the most popular 3D Sonic games in the series from a casual gamer's perspective is Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, a game story that is centered around a 12-year-old girl getting shot in a military operation that was then hidden by the government. Now, I'm not saying the games need to go that far, no, but to go from that to this?
I think you're itching because you need a bath.
Was a clear overcorrection. Sonic Frontiers hit the sweet spot of not going too far, but also doesn't alienate older fans like me. Not to mention the references. This game references everything, the classic games, the adventure games, Heroes, Shadow the Hedgehog, Sonic Riders, and among others. It's great.
These visions, they weren't like what Tikal showed us way back when, were they?
Finally, it feels like there's a cohesive timeline, and it's super commendable that the team did this. It helps make the series have more weight for what it does going forward. And for longtime fans like me, I feel validated for sticking with the series for so long. And then we have the hard-hitting questions that this game boldly asks. Where did the Chaos Emeralds come from? Who were the ancients that settled here first? This is something I never thought the Sonic series would ever dare try to ask, but this game boldly does so, and it does so well. The ancients looking like Chaos literally made me jump out of my chair and scream in excitement. So many questions. Are they the same creature as Chaos? Well, if you collect the Eggman logs in the game, which by the way I highly recommend as it adds more to the lore and the overall story, Eggman learns that Chaos is a descendant of the ancients. You also get more insight into Eggman's growing relationship with Sage. Now, I know that raises questions because I thought it was widely believed that Chaos was a mutated Chao. Maybe that's not the case. Or maybe the small group of agents that they mentioned that will take the Chaos Emeralds to the Master Emerald would later inhabit Angel Island, and over years of evolution and mixing of Chao, you get Chaos. Who knows? But it's great that there's new conversations to be had about the Sonic series again in the community that is about lore. That is something I've missed dearly. Now, while this is the best written Sonic story in a long time, it isn't perfect. The whole idea of Sage just straight up not telling Sonic, hey, if you listen to the voice in the sky, you will cause the destruction of the world, was a bit aggravating. The whole time when she's telling Sonic to stop, she's being cryptic, and he never understands how what he's doing is a bad thing. I know they kind of tried to write their way out of this by saying that she can't share data with the enemy because she's on Eggman's side and all, but that didn't stop her from talking to him on Ares Island or Chaos Island. Heck, she even answered his question and let him know his friends are going to be okay. That's sharing data. isn't it? Of course, this is all just a nitpick though. The big thing for me though that I don't like is the end. I played this game multiple times already, and I still have no idea what the end is. Why is it attacking the Ancients? What's its end goal? What even is it? It just looks like a f***ing moon! Talk about a lame final boss. At least it's the only Sonic character I could draw. That's something, right? Outside of the rating, there is some stuff to mention, like the animations for the game. Some of them are passable, and I do like the cinematography for some of them, but most of them are kind of static. The characters just kind of stand there, and that's fine for Sonic and his friends considering their current situation, but what's jarring is when it happens to Sage. One moment she's trying to kill you, but the next you can find her in the open world where you can just talk to her at eye level only 3 feet away from you. I think it would have been best to at least have her high up in the sky when talking to Sonic, so she seems out of reach or something. I don't know, she's only trying to kill you! There is also some weird lip syncing issues, and Sonic just straight up looking dead in the eyes at times. Like, is he okay? What's he thinking about? The voice acting in this game is also pretty good too across the board. Apart from a few awkward deliveries from Sonic. You can tell Roger in this game toned his voice down a little bit and isn't trying so hard, and it did take some getting used to. But I thought it was okay. Not the best Sonic performance, but a nice change. Now let's talk about the meat and potatoes of Sonic Frontiers, the open zone islands and the gameplay. This game's graphics are beautiful, and as a result, the Starfall Islands are an incredible sight. The game has varying weather on the islands, which is a great attention to detail, and the day and night cycle is awesome to see fully implemented in a Sonic game. Something I'm still sad was cut from games like Sonic 06, but it makes for gorgeous moments at night or during sunsets. The beautiful waterfalls of Kronos, the sizzling sands of Ares, and the glowing red hot lava in Chaos Island are truly a sight to behold, and easily makes this game stand up to games like Sonic Unleashed in terms of beauty. But notice how I only mentioned those 3 islands in a game advertised to have 5. You have the 3 I mentioned, but you also have Rhea, Island 4, which is just the other half of Island 1, that you can't get to due to an invisible wall. And you are barely even there for more than 20 minutes throughout the story. Now, having 4 islands in your game isn't a big deal at all. I truly don't mind it. I just don't like the idea of people going in expecting 5 when they're honestly getting 4. Just something I think people should know. Which, speaking of the island's biomes, that's really it, as Island 5 Uranos looks the same as Island 1 and Island 4, which is disappointing. I was hoping for something like a snow world or at least one more biome to change it up, as the green grass can become tiring to look at. Regardless, the islands are huge and accommodate for Sonic's speed well. It can take a while to run from one side of the island to the other, and each island has its own unique terrain and how easy it is to get from one objective to the other, which is good that Sonic can't just run forward. Sometimes there's an obstacle and he needs to run around a wall or something. There are also times though in the open world, and mainly in Chaos Island, where they start to incorporate 2D sections in the open world, and it feels like this could have been handled way better. There were countless times I was just running along and then BAM! I am locked on a spline and I can't move on my Z-axis anymore until I complete whatever obstacle course I just got myself into. Outside of that, I will say, the lack of loops, hills, and corkscrews are very apparent. The design of this game seems more based in realism, and not something you would guess would be in an area in the Sonic universe. Not to say that there are no loops or corkscrews, those do exist, but almost all of which are done via rails, automated sections, or cyberspace, which I will talk about later. There is a good amount to run and see in Sonic Frontiers, but not a lot of reward for exploring outside of the story. For example, after beating the game, I was just kind of standing on Island 1's tower and looking at Island 4's area. From here, I was able to see that there was a wall run path leading to somewhere on the side of the map. I was curious, so I booted up Island 4, ran to the area I saw, took the secret path on the side of the wall, and was greeted with nothing. And speaking of which, I feel like Island 4 had way more going for it, but was scrapped late in development. And I feel this way because there are platforms in the world that lead to nothing. The player wouldn't even otherwise see any of this, as this is all far from the story objective in this island, which is a shame as this is the island you saw the most in the trailers. Hey guys, Future Sam here. The Mysteries of Island 4 was something I discussed before the game released. Since then, it has been confirmed that Island 1, 4, and 5 were all meant to be one big island and was cut some point after the Frontiers World reveal trailer. which is a shame, but anyways, back to the review. Outside of Island 4 though, the islands themselves can seem rather flat, and any platforming is usually done via floating platforms and small obstacle courses, but I'm not quite sure this was the best approach. I would have liked these obstacle courses to be integrated in the world itself, rather than just floating above it. And by the way, on the topic of floating rails, I don't really have a problem with them floating in the world. I think my main problem is their aesthetics. These are considered ancient rails, but they don't really look like ancient rails. But that's just a nitpick. And on the topic of the floating platforms in this game, they do have some serious pop-in issues. Granted, you do get used to this over time, but I do hope future titles do address this issue. My initial fear for this game was that they were simply going to take Sonic Forces controls and throw Sonic into an open world. Well, I'm happy to say that that is not the case. Sonic in the open world in this game feels really, really good. Though I do want to warn right away, to play this game on the high speed style setting, even if this is your first Sonic game and not the action style setting, as his speed is just way too slow that it is unbearable in that setting. And I'm about to break some breaking news. Sonic, for the first time in a boost game, can turn. Oh my god, thank god he could turn. Sonic's turn is tight, especially while moving. He's not too precise like in Sonic 06, and he's not too loose feeling like in many of the recent boost games. His mid-air controls feel very responsive, and it makes platforming feel pretty good. The customizable controls and the options also helps with this. Here are my customizable controls for the game, and I believe they do a great job if you're curious. Now, I do want to talk about the obvious. Yes, there is a lack of momentum in Sonic's on-foot gameplay, which is why the world is lacking in traditional Sonic slopes. And I do hope this happens for future titles. Now, to be fair, since they didn't design the world with Sonic's momentum in mind, this honestly wasn't the worst. I still had a great time. But there is a problem with him having a lack of weight. For example, you could be boosting full speed, but the second you stop holding forward, Sonic will stop on a dime, which does feel a little off, and I do hope something like this can get addressed in future titles. But that's not all. Sonic's jump in this game does seem to kill any inertia and speed you had, and it does feel a bit deflating. But I do want to make this clear. That doesn't mean you can't get any airtime in this game. Oh, trust me. You can get some serious airtime. And doing this feels incredibly exhilarating, but you can only do that when you boost off a ramp without jumping. In fact, for some weird and inconsistent reason, if you were to jump off a rail by holding your jump button, you actually keep all your inertia and speed, and that feels incredibly exhilarating as well. But again, this only happens on rails and not on foot. And if you do want to do it on foot, you can only do it by boosting at a ramp without jumping. Sometimes. The game isn't really consistent on when it wants to do this. Sometimes Sonic can just act like a magnet on the floor. Nevertheless, it is super fun when those moments happen, and you can do some crazy stuff if you practice. This is where I think the movement really shines. Returning are all the basic moves Sonic has been known to have, like the air dash, double jump, the light speed dash, and the stomp. The air dash is okay, but I do feel like you don't go as far as you did before in previous games. But a nice trick in this game to go even further is to air dash immediately after hitting the home attack button on an enemy. It is a great way to increase your distance. The double jump in this game is okay, but I do feel like if you use it to correct a jump you mismanaged, it can be tricky to turn around in midair. The best analogy I can use is that his double jump behaves in midair like Mario's awkward turn radius in 64. Not great for correcting over boundless pits. The lightspeed dash is in this game, and that's great, but for some reason, every time Sonic performs it, he breaks at the end of the ring trail, which is why I believe a lot of the ring trails in this game end in a dash pad or a dash ring to compensate for this. Which is really weird because I do not remember this happening in Sonic Forces. But yeah, this sometimes breaks the flow of the game. And the stomp attack works as usual, but now you can perform it 3 times in a row by holding down the button. And honestly, I would have liked to see the bounce attack from Sonic Adventure 2 make a return here. And for the first time in 3D, Sonic now has the drop dash. And I think it is great for going up terrain that Sonic can't otherwise climb. Though you do have to press the button 3 times now instead of twice, and it did take some getting used to. Now let's go into the new moves as Sonic Frontiers focuses on combat beyond the homing attack. Like in Shadow the Hedgehog, Sonic unleashes a fury of punches and kicks. The new side loop ability is great and reminiscent of the paraloop mechanic from Knights. Almost all enemies get affected by the side loop, and it is usually the main thing to go to take down defenses. There's also a good number of other moves you can unlock via the skill tree. I personally love the quick side loop, which reminds me of the tornado attack from Sonic Heroes, as well as the Sonic Boom attack, which can feel a bit OP at times. But it is a great way to max out your combo meter, and when it is maxed out, Sonic goes crazy using the Phantom Rush attack, unleashing a fury of punch and kicks all over, straight out of an anime show. An important move to remember in Sonic Frontiers is the parry. In fact, I'll say it's damn near imperative that you learn this move. The parry allows Sonic to deliver a punishing blow to enemies if done correctly by countering their attack. One of my biggest complaints about this move though, you can hold the parry button pretty much as long as you want, and Sonic will just deflect anything that comes his way. Granted, I do like this move to kind of correct my jumps in mid-air whenever I miscorrect something, but in most games when you have a parry system, timing is key to pull off, and it keeps the player engaged. By dumbing this move down so much, you kill almost all challenge the game throws at you. In fact, there is already mods that fixes this, and from my experience, it makes Sonic Frontiers that much more enjoyable to get into fights by parrying correctly. Hopefully this is something they can address in future games. Sonic Team, don't be afraid to have actual challenge. Another downside is the skill tree, as it is small, and while some moves may have different animations, most of them all do the same thing, which is hurt the enemy. I do wish some of the moves had different effects on the enemies to give each its own unique twist on the combat. Also, just a heads up, be sure to unselect the auto combo in the settings. Based off its name, you probably already know what it does, but it's a move that essentially takes away the player's ability to control what combo they want to do next, and it does the combos for you automatically. It seems ridiculous this is even an option. That should really only be an easy mode of the game. In terms of enemies, Sonic Frontiers houses a good variety. My favorite being the ninja and the tower, which are fun to take down. Some other enemies like the soldier are the basic enemy in this game, and can be taken down with a basic homing attack, but can start to get annoying to fight when they start having shields. Which is another great thing about Sonic Frontiers, is that any enemy you face in earlier islands becomes harder as you progress in the game. But I do wish they got even harder by the last island. Now, there are some annoying enemies in this game, like the jellyfish that steals your camera just by running by it in the desert world, as well as this wolf enemy that stops you in your tracks until you parry all of them. Outside of the basic enemies though, you also fight guardians, which are like the mini bosses of the game. I really do enjoy these. They are a lot of fun and are all different in how you take them down. Now, even though the combat in this game is fun, it can get a bit repetitive if you play for an extended period of time. Like other open world games, Sonic Frontiers houses some RPG elements, like Sonic being able to upgrade his attack and defense power by obtaining seeds, which you get by defeating enemies and finding them around the world. When you take them to this Hermit Coco, he ranks you up depending on how many seeds you got. Now, this is fine and not hard to rank up the more you play the game. Sadly, I can't say the same for his friend, the Elder Coco. Excuse my language, but f this guy. He is responsible for ranking up your ring capacity and your speed. To do so, you bring him the Coco you find around the world. The problem is, unlike his hermit friend, he doesn't care how many you bring him, you will only upgrade your stat points 1 point at a time, which is incredibly infuriating and not consistent. Why? This doesn't incentivize grinding, this incentivizes me pulling my hair out. My other problem with all of this is that the game is actually a bit misleading here. From my understanding, your speed level does not change your on-foot running speed. The only thing it does seem to change is your climbing speed. Of course, there is an ability in this game where if you do max your ring capacity to level 99, Sonic will be able to run at full speed while boosting without the need of having a full ring count. Which, speaking of, yes, depending on if your ring count is maxed, Sonic will run at different boost speeds, which I think is cool, and it incentivizes players to not lose their rings and be a little more careful. And as a side note, I also like them incorporating more Sonic Movie Lightning elements into the games. Now let's talk progression in Sonic Frontiers. The first thing I recommend for everyone to do first is to complete the map as much as possible. To do this, you find puzzles that are next to these signposts and you must complete them. The majority of them is nothing more than just pressing some glowing buttons, which is kind of the opposite of what I want to do in a Sonic game, but it's not a deal breaker. I am surprised though, out of all the challenges in this game, not one of them is racing against another character of sorts. Imagine how fun it would be to race against some enemy in the big open world. That would be great. But again, it's not a big deal, these puzzles really weren't that bad. Once you have the map completed, you can easily find your friends. To talk to them, you need to find their character-specific tokens, and you can find them around the world by completing small obstacle courses around the map. That's really where a lot of the floating platforms come in. Along the way, you also need to get Chaos Emeralds. To do that, you need Vault Keys. To get Vault Keys, you can find them around the map or get them via How Well You Do in cyberspace. To enter cyberspace, you also need to get Portal Gears, and to do that, you need to take down enemies or guardians. In my opinion, cyberspace is a huge letdown of this game. Traditional boost stages acting like special stages? Count me in! But what I don't like is two major factors. One, Sonic's control in these stages are not as good as they are in the open world. He feels rather slow and stiff, and no settings can change this. But two, the level themes are all the same throughout the game, and it gets tiring quick. Most of the cyberspace levels are Green Hill, a level theme I am personally sick of seeing due to how much it returns. Some themes are Chemical Plant, another theme I am sick of seeing. A few others are Sky Sanctuary, which is fine, but kind of boring since we already saw this in Generations. And the one you see the least in cyberspace is, of course, the new one, the city theme, which looks cool and all, but it just makes me wish we had more new than old. Sadly, the level themes are not the only thing being reused. Level layouts are also returning from games like Sonic Generations and Unleashed, which is kind of a shame because a lot of us Sonic fans are still replaying those games and they still feel a little too fresh. So I feel like the magic of playing those stages are just not there. And if I'm honest, Frontiers' new gameplay style, especially in the cyberspace stages, clashes so hard with the design of the stages from Generations and Unleashed because there is no dedicated drift button. Thankfully, it's not all doom and gloom. There are a few level layouts returning that haven't made a return in a long time, like Sonic Adventure 2 levels. And while not perfect, I do find those to be way more fun and matches better with the Frontiers gameplay style. In the end though, I do find cyberspace to be a bit cheap, and I do wish more effort was placed into them. The game does try to write into the story that the level reusing is part of Sonic's memories or whatever, but I don't think that's a good enough excuse. And the concept doesn't even really make sense considering, again, the city theme is brand new. Sounds like it was more about saving time and not making new assets. Now, don't get it twisted. I did have fun speedrunning these stages, especially when they are challenging, but sadly it is not that often when they are challenging. For some reason, stage 1-2, one of the first cyberspace stages you play in the game, is also the hardest one in the game. That's so bizarre, but I liked the challenge, and it made me wish the others were also designed like this. I will say, thankfully, after doing the first 2 cyberspace stages, if they aren't your cup of tea, they are completely optional, and you could get the Emerald Keys by scavenging around the world or by fishing with Big. Yes, you heard that right. Fishing makes a return, though it plays completely differently since Adventure. In the world, you will find purple fishing tokens. With them, you can fish with Big on every island. There is a plethora of fish and animals, as well as random funny assets you could collect in the Sonic universe. With enough of these, you can use the tokens you get to buy things from Big, like Coco, Emerald Keys, Portal Gears, Seeds, XP, and Eggman Logs. Which, speaking of, I recommend everyone get every single Eggman log and listen to all of them before you get to the end of the game. It adds to the lore, and there is some really cool references he talks about. While the fishing minigame is fun, I do wish there was another means of collecting stuff in Sonic Frontiers, like more minigames. Which, speaking of, some of the minigames are fun, but some can get annoying. The lantern puzzle can take quite a while to get right, and the pinball is a complete pace breaker. 5 million points? Seriously? And that honestly would have been fine, but the second you die, you lose your multiplier and you have to start all over, and it's, oh god, it took forever. Now let's get into the very best Sonic Frontiers has to offer, and that is the Titan boss fights. Giganto, Wyvern, and Knight are some of the best bosses to grace the series in years. Most of the bosses all start the same. Sonic has 6 Chaos Emeralds, and the 7th is being held by the boss. So you need to start the fight by climbing these behemoths, and once you get the 7th Emerald at the top and turn into Super Sonic, yo, look at Sonic, oh my god, yo, he just threw it into the air with a tornado. What, did he just throw him onto the ground? Wait, whoa, Sonic, don't do it, oh my god, he just threw him into a mountain. Yo, this is crazy, Sonic just went right through him. What is this? Wait, he just made him eat his own missiles! He made him eat his own missiles! He just deflected and shot! Wait, he's riding his ship! He just sliced him in half! What is going on? God damn, this is so good! Sonic turns into an absolute god. Never before have we ever controlled a Super Sonic with so much at his disposal. First off, all of his combat moves in the base game carry over, which is really cool. The only real difference is that you get to do all this while flying and being super quick. Let's start with the first fight against Giganto. I will never forget my first encounter with this boss. I remember standing up out of my chair yelling, "This is a Sonic game," as I proceeded to kick its ass with some of the best music this series has seen in years. Until my ring count went out and Sonic was eaten alive. Yeah, if this is your first time running through this game, be sure to farm some rings before fighting this guy. You're going to need it, as Super Sonic doesn't take damage, but to maintain his super form, he needs rings, which deplete slowly over time, essentially acting as a time limit. The entire fight against Giganto is in a giant arena, and you need to be careful because this guy will just straight up sucker punch you. Parrying is your best friend here, and if you pull it off correctly, you can deliver a punishing counterattack that looks amazing. About halfway through the fight though, every Titan will encounter a second phase where they get slightly harder to fight. Giganto literally turns into a light show full of lasers. A huge tip I have for each Titan fight is to utilize the Psyloop and Quick Psyloop abilities if possible, as they have different effects on each Titan that is so awesome to see. For Giganto, if you Psyloop him, you throw him into the air with a tornado where you can deliver some punishing blows. If you Psyloop him again while he's in the air, you slam him down to the ground where you can continue to counterattack. It is great. Eventually you beat the boss with Sonic delivering a super brutal final hit, where he literally flies right through him. God damn! Next, we have Wyvern on Ares Island. This fight is just as badass, but it is played out differently. Instead of being in an arena, this fight takes place in the skies over the entire island, which is incredible. The entire island is the arena this time. But it is a bit automatic, as Sonic is on a spine almost the entire fight, outside of these moments where you can dodge and parry missiles back at him. This fight is more focused on parrying at the right time, which is neat, but as I mentioned before, it would have had a bigger impact if we couldn't hold the parry as long as we wanted. But if you do it right, you get these really cool sequences where Sonic will just straight up grab the entire Titan and throw him into a mountain. There's also one attack that I just learned about recently on a live stream, where this boss will shoot you with a laser out of his mouth if you don't counterattack right away. Wow! Oh fuck, that's sick! That's actually fun. That's the first time I've ever seen that. That scared me. It's great that there's hidden stuff like this, and if you pull off a Psyloop correctly, you can bind him up with chains and continue to hound away. Hidden stuff like this under the surface really makes these fights special. Next, we have Night on Chaos Island, probably my favorite one. Just like the Giganto fight, this one takes place back in an arena. The only difference is that Night is on skates and doesn't like to stay in one place. And when you do catch him, he has a shield that also acts as a saw blade that he throws directly at your face. And in a super badass moment, if you time it right, you could jump on the blade and hit it right back at him. It's so cool. That is when you're not being bombarded by missiles.
You and your friend.
Sam is screaming right now.
Please, 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 please!
Shoot, that's a whole 360.
Dear Lord! The second phase of the fight involves you parrying the blade back at him to stop him from skating around, and at which point you can deliver some serious damage. If you Psyloop Knight, you end up stabbing him with beams of light. Do it again, and a giant sword will come down hitting him, and the end of the fight is probably the most badass thing ever, where Sonic picks up the Knight's sword and cuts him in half. Okay, serious question. Who at Sonic Team was binge watching anime in the last 5 years since Sonic Forces? Was it you, Kishimoto? It was you, wasn't it? It's okay, keep it up. Next, we have the final Titan fight, Supreme. And this fight is ass. This entire fight feels completely unfinished. First off, this Titan is almost a carbon copy of Giganto. This time he's packing heat though, that he doesn't whip out until a cutscene. But unlike the other Titans, you don't have much freedom with this fight. If you don't attack these triangle things right before attacking him, you're gonna see this cutscene more times than you'd want to. And on top of that, his health will just straight up stop going down until you do what it wants you to do. The second phase of the fight shows the Titan getting these wings that look super cool, but the moment you go back into the fight where he's flying, the wings are gone. Just gone. I really don't think this is finished. It's kind of hard to explain, but there really is a clunkiness here that doesn't ease up in this fight. And it also doesn't help that this Titan is super easy to destroy. If this was truly the last Titan, shouldn't it be, I don't know, hard? Anyways, after taking down the Titan super easily, Sonic asks exactly what we're all thinking.
Is that it?
And thankfully, no. It's not. The true final boss, the end, is a fight that happens in space. And even though the design is literally a ball, which is super lame, I'm sure the fight is going to be something super special, or not. It's the hacking minigame again, this time just harder. Yeah, the final boss of Sonic Frontiers is a shoot 'em up similar to Ikaruga. What? Now, don't get me wrong, I don't hate shoot 'em ups, in fact I quite like them. But when you start the game with a boss fight like this, and have moments like this along the way, this, in comparison, looks so anticlimactic. Sonic Team, please don't ever do this again. This was such a disappointing final fight, which, by the way, only appears when you play on hard mode. If you don't, it skips right over to the QTE. Yeah, this entire fight doesn't feel finished. Which, speaking of, the beginning of this fight says to work with the Titans, plural, implying that we are supposed to be working with multiple. And most likely, we were supposed to be working with the Ancients themselves because who the hell is Sonic talking to in the beginning here? Because him telling this to Sage makes absolutely no sense.
He took your home world. He took your lives. Are you going to let him do it all over again? I need your help. We can end this. Please.
At least the music's good, and that goes for all the boss themes. Undefeatable, Break Through It All, Find Your Flame, and I'm Here are some of the best music this series has to offer. Seriously, Sonic Team once again delivering with flying colors in the music department. And that goes for everything. I love this entire game soundtrack. It is so good. Another sour point I do have with Sonic Frontiers, sadly, is its endgame. Once you beat the main game story, there really isn't much else to do. You unlock arcade mode to replay cyberspace stages, which is cool, but why can't I replay the Titan boss fights? That's pretty disappointing. The only thing you really can do is replay the story? Seems like a strange oversight. But yeah, that's Sonic Frontiers. This game, while not perfect, and definitely starts to trip over itself at the end, is a really solid Sonic title that I enjoyed. I could very easily see this being someone's favorite 3D Sonic game. The 3D controls in the open world is tight. The combat is super fun with stellar boss fights through the majority of the game. The islands are beautiful and super fun to run around in. The story is really solid with great character development, and the music is the cherry on top. Ian Flynn writing the story was an amazing idea that a lot of people in the fan base, including myself, have been advocating for, and they need to keep him for all future games for the time being. He is so good at what he does. Of course, there are some things here and there that I would love to see done better, like momentum being in Sonic's overall movement, as well as levels designed with said movement in mind, like more loops, hills, and corkscrews to roll on, as well as more platforms integrated into the world itself rather than floating on top of it. But as Sonic Team said, if this game is going to be the direction they are taking Sonic for years to come, then this is a solid starting point that I can see taking this hedgehog to a promising future. And so far, that future is indeed looking bright, with free DLC coming to the game in 2023, as they just released an entire roadmap of things to come, including new challenges, new playable characters, and more stories to tell. I am super excited for the future of both Sonic Frontiers and everything after it, and I will be sure to cover everything once it all drops. Thank you all so much for joining me on this journey. It seriously means a lot to see your guys' support through the years. Here's to a bright future for Sonic the Hedgehog, and with that said, this is Sam signing out. See you later, procrastinators.